All rise.
The Kosovo Specialist Chambers is now in session.
Please be seated.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome, whether you are in or outside the courtroom. Madam Court Officer, can you please call the case?
Good morning, Your Honor. This is case KSC BC 2020-06, the Specialist Prosecutor versus Hashim Thaci, Kadri Veseli, Recep Selimi, and Jakub Krasnici.
Thank you, Madam Court Officer. Now I would kindly ask the parties and participants to introduce themselves, starting with the Prosecutor's Office. Mr. Prosecutor.
Thank you, Your Honor, and good morning to you and everyone inside and outside the courtroom. Alan Teeger and Dunya Hatabi appear for the Specialist Prosecutor's Office.
Thank you, Mr. Prosecutor. Now I turn to the defense, please. Microphone, please, Mr. Kihu.
Good morning, Your Honor. Gregory Kehoe, Luka Mishetic, and Dasted Palaska for President Hashim Thaci.
Thank you, Mr. Kihu. And for the record, I note that Mr. Thaci attends the hearing via VTC. Now I turn to the victims, please. Mr. Laws.
Good morning to you and to everyone. I'm Simon Laws. I'm counsel for the victims in this case. May I please introduce also my co-counsel, Maria Radziowska, who is in the courtroom with Your Honour this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Laws. And finally, I turn to the registry. Mr. Nielsen, please.
Good morning, Your Honour, and good morning, colleagues. Jonas Nilsson, Judicial Services Division, representing Registry today.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. On 3 September 2021, the Specialist Prosecutor's Office filed a request to amend the indictment pursuant to Rule 91B. The SPO presented 3 categories of amendments. The first category consisted of 2 detention sites located at Suareke, Suvareka municipality, at or in connection with KLA members, committed acts of persecution, imprisonment, arbitrary detention, other inhuman acts, cruel treatment, torture, murder, and enforced disappearance. The second category consisted of 2 incidents of persecution and murder committed in connection with a detention site in Geylan, Gnilane municipality, and a modification of the time frame for the Geylan-Gnilane detention site. The third category consisted of 2 incidents of the accused personal participation in the crimes charged. On 23 December 2021, I issued a first decision on the SPO request, in which I granted the SPO's motion to amend the indictment in relation to the third category of proposed amendments, which I considered not to constitute new charges. Further, I found that the first and second categories of amendments were new charges and therefore must be assessed against the requisite evidentiary threshold of well-grounded suspicion as per Rule 86.4 of the rules, and in light of the evidence submitted as per Rule 86.3 of the rules. The parties were ordered to file their responses and reply on the question of whether supporting material to the amendments deemed to constitute new charges support a finding of well-grounded suspicion pursuant to Rule 86.4 of the rules. On 22 April 2022, I confirmed the first and the second category of amendments on the charges against the accused contained therein. I also ordered the SPO to submit by Friday, 19 April 2022, an amended indictment with the first category and second category of amendments. On 29 April, the SPO filed its amended indictment, a lesser confidential redacted and public redacted versions of the first category evidentiary outline, and a confidential and public redacted version of the amended second category evidentiary outline. And finally, on 2nd May 2022, I scheduled this initial appearance. Before I continue, Madam Court Officer, can you check with the detention unit, because I don't see Mr. Thaci on screen, please. Thank you very much. I think it's because of the angle of the camera I wasn't seeing Mr. Thaci. Now allow me to explain the specific purpose of this further appearance for the benefit of the accused and those joining us in the public gallery and online. Today's hearing is not a trial. No evidence will be presented or debated, and the guilt or innocence of the accused will not be discussed or decided. The purpose of this initial appearance is regulated by Article 39 of the law and Rules 92 and 90 of the rules. According to these provisions, as pretrial judge, I shall have the new charges in the confirmed indictment read to the accused, confirm that the accused understands the new charges, satisfy myself that the rights of the accused, in particular his right to counsel, are respected, and inform the accused that within 30 days of today's hearing, he will be called upon to admit guilt or plead not guilty on each new charge set out in the confirmed amended indictment. However, if the accused wishes to do so, he may immediately admit guilt or plead non-guilty. I expect the parties to adhere to these matters, which I will address in turn. Should either party wish to discuss any other matter not expressly foreseen in the context of the initial appearance, they are invited to do so in writing by making a filing before me. First, Mr. Thaci, may I ask you to confirm that you have received the confirmed amended indictment dated 29 April 2022? I think there is an issue with the sound with Mr. Thaci. May I ask the audiovisual technician to check that this is on, please? Mr. Thaci, I think this sound connection has now been fixed, so I will ask you again to confirm if you have received the confirmed indictment dated 29 April 2022. Mr. Thaci.
I believe he's on mute there, Your Honor.
Apparently the microphone is still muted on this end. So I'm told that the audiovisual technicians are working on fixing the connection. It might take a couple of seconds.
your audio,
Okay.
but the visual, that should be there too.
I can now
Okay,
hear
just-
that the microphone is on, Mr. Thaci. So finally, we've solved the problem. So sorry for the interruption. So, Mr. Thaci, may I ask you to confirm that you received the confirmed amended indictment dated 29 October 2022?
Yeah, we have the audio turned on now. Probably.
Okay.
Mr. Thaci, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So I will ask you again to confirm that you have received the confirmed amended indictment dated 29 April 2022.
Yes.
Thank you. I will now ask the court officer to read out the new charges contained in the confirmed amended indictment as foreseen in Article 39 of the law and Rule 92. Madam Court Officer.
Your Honor, if the matter can be expedited, of course, we'll waive the reading at this point. It really doesn't, it's just add more volume to the entire matter. So we have gone through this with our client. It's honestly more of the same, absent the redactions. So we will waive the reading of the new, of any of the new elements in the indictment.
Thank you, Mr. Kihu. Mr. Thaci, are you in agreement that we do not read out the new charges at the hearing today?
Four.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Thaci. Then I will ask the court officer not to read out all the new charges today, and it's accessible to the public in the written filings accessible online. Mr. Thaci, I wish to remind you that this is not the time to contest the new charges, but simply to acknowledge your understanding of the charges. You will have ample opportunity to challenge the charges with the assistance of your counsel. Mr. Thaci, did you understand the new charges contained in the confirmed indictment as they are in the indictment that has been distributed to you?
No.
When I say do you understand, I mean, I don't ask if you agree with them. I just say if you've been able to understand what they mean.
I didn't understand them because I didn't have an opportunity to read them. They are heavily redacted.
The issue, quite simply, for our client is that have we gone through these new charges with him? Yes, but as with most of these charges, they're so redacted with names, events, time. It's just more of the same that we've had from the beginning, that it makes my client, the President Thaci, and I'm sure with the other accused, without any way to grasp an understanding of exactly what the specialist prosecutor is advancing. It's a continuing difficulty. We're adding more volume to something that's already there, and then at crucial points throughout all of this, there are numerous redactions, and in this instance, we have more. At this point, not adding much to this. These additions aren't adding much to the equation. There are redactions that make it impossible for him to understand. We have gone through this with President Thaci, and we will just expedite matters by interposing a plea of not guilty at this time. I think that will curtail much of the questioning of President Thaci at this juncture.
Thank you, Mr. Kiho. Mr. Thaci, do you want to add anything on this topic?
No, just that I plead not guilty. although, as I said, I didn't understand the indictment because I couldn't read the full indictment, but I plead not guilty.
Your Honor, I trust you understand the difficulty for anybody, giving a knowledgable decision on anything when there are so many redactions to the document. So given those redactions, President Thaci is interposing a plea of not guilty. It's just, honestly, this is more of the same of what we've seen in the past. So that's the position of President Thaci at this juncture.
Thank you, Mr. Kihu. I just note for the public that there are indeed redactions in the document, and they mainly refer to the names of potential witnesses and victims, and they are authorized by myself in judicially explained and detailed decision. Now let me recall your rights before the court for Mr. Thaci. So the law on the specialist chambers and the rules of procedure evidence guarantee you a number of rights, and I will read out the most important ones. First, you have the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond reasonable doubt. In the determination of the charges against you, you are entitled to a fair and public hearing, subject to any measures ordered for the protection of victims and witnesses. You have the right to be informed promptly and in detail, in a language which you understand, of the nature and cause of the charges against you. You have the right to adequate time and facilities for the preparation of your defense, and to communicate with the counsel of your own choosing. You have the right to be tried within a reasonable time. You have the right to be tried in your presence and to defend yourself through your counsel. You have the right to have counsel assigned to you and without payment if you do not have sufficient means to pay for it. You have the right to examine or have examined the witness against you and to obtain the attendance and examination of witnesses on your behalf. You have the right to have the free assistance of an interpreter if you cannot understand or speak the language used in the court. You have the right not to be compelled to testify against yourself or to admit guilt. You have the right to remain silent, and no adverse inference shall be drawn from your silence. You also have the right to make unsworn statements relevant to the case, and you may appear as a witness under oath. You have the right to lodge preliminary motions. You have the right to receive the supporting material to the amended indictment submitted for confirmation. You have the right to receive all statements of witnesses whom the specialist prosecutor intends to call to testify at trial in the language you understand and speak. You have the right to receive immediately any information which may reasonably suggest your innocence and mitigate your guilt, or affect the credibility or reliability of the specialist prosecutor's evidence as soon as the information is in its custody, control, or actual knowledge. You have the right to that all material and relevant evidence or facts in possession of the specialist prosecutor be made available to you before the beginning of and during the proceedings. This right is only subject to restrictions which are strictly necessary and when counterbalancing protections are applied. You have the right not to be detained for an unreasonable period prior to the opening of the case, to request review of decisions on your detention, and to appeal such decisions directly before the Court of Appeal. And finally, you have the right to appeal either directly or through the certification process as provided for under the rules. Mr. Thaci, I read you the most important right that you enjoy in accordance with the applicable legal framework. Can you confirm that you understood these rights?
Yes.
Mr. Thaci, I wish to inform that according to Article 21(5) of the law, you may not represent yourself because you are currently in detention. representation by counsel is therefore mandatory. However, I take note that you have been and you are today represented by counsel, so I am therefore satisfied that the accused is presently represented by counsel for today and for the next steps of the procedure. I will now, Mr. Thaci, formally ask you of your plea, even if you indicated it before. So you have, in theory, 30 days from today to be called upon to admit your guilt or plead not guilty. But if you wish, you can plead guilty or not guilty today. So therefore, Mr. Thaci, I will ask you to indicate me formally whether you will plead guilty or not guilty for the new charges contained in the confirmed amended indictment. Mr. Thaci.
President, I don't know if there is a problem with the audio, the audio again on this, but I believe that the court can accept our interposing a plea of not guilty for the president at this time.
Okay.
Mr. Thaci, can you confirm? You have the floor.
Yeah, it's okay now.
Është në rregull tani. Your Honor, as I said earlier, the new charges are heavily redacted. I wasn't able to read them in full, but anyway, I plead not guilty.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thaci. This is noted. At this point, I would like the parties and participants, if they have any other issue they would like to raise. We'll start with the Specialist Prosecutor's Office. Mr. Prosecutor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing to raise.
Thank you, Mr. Prosecutor. Mr. Laws?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Laws. Now I turn to the defense. Mr. Kihu, please.
Briefly, Your Honor, just a note for the record that our initial appeal concerning the defects in the original indictment are still pending in the appellate chamber. So the court should be aware of that. The other issue is the time frame for motions under Rule 94 is 21 days. That 21 days runs from today, I take it, Your Honor. And I raise that up so the court can correct me if I am mistaken in that regard.
Thank you, Mr. Kihu. This is correct. Even if the rules are not absolutely clear on the starting point in the case of an amended indictment, I consider that the time limit starts from today. So the 21-day deadline starts from today.
Your Honor, we will be filing motions, notwithstanding the redactions, which make it, in some instances, virtually incomprehensible. We will be filing some motions in that regard. So I thank you for clarifying that time frame.
Thank you, Mr. Kihu. I don't see any other parties or participants requesting the floor. So this concludes today's hearing. Thank the parties and participants for their participation, and the hearing is adjourned. Thank you.
All rise.